They're a bunch of liars. Prince William just shattered royal silence with 6 words that could change everything. It was supposed to be a calm, forward-looking visit, an environmental campaign at Dartmoor. But when Prince William was asked point-blank if he was the royal who questioned Archie's skin tone, as Meghan Markle once implied in the infamous Oprah interview, everything stopped. And then he snapped. His fiery denial stunned reporters, sparked a global frenzy, and may have just blown the lid off the most guarded royal secret in years. What made William lose control? Why now? And what does this mean for the future of the monarchy and his relationship with Harry? Stay with us as we unpack the moment the heir to the throne broke rank. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. It was meant to be a quiet day, a hopeful day, the kind of day that royal aides dream of. Calm skies, pristine landscapes, and a future king standing before a rugged backdrop to announce a long-term vision for environmental restoration. Prince William, dressed in his signature muted outdoor gear, stood in Dartmoor among conservationists and reporters, preparing to unveil an ambitious 20-year plan to restore one of Britain's most cherished national parks. It was a rare moment of clarity amid months of royal tension, but no one could have anticipated what was coming next. Not his team, not the reporters, certainly not William himself. The winds of Dartmoor, often wild and untamed, seemed to carry more than just the weather that day. There was a quiet electricity in the air, a kind of suspense that seasoned royal watchers recognize just before things go sideways. As the Duke of Cornwall, heir to the throne, stood on the damp earth addressing local leaders and environmental advocates, the moment felt charged with possibility. His words about preservation and legacy were meant to echo throughout the kingdom. And yet, before the applause had even faded, the event took a swift turn. A single question, launched with surgical precision from the back of the gathering, would cut through the decorum like a blade. Are you the one who questioned Archie's skin tone, like Meghan implied? That was it. 16 words. One bombshell. It was not shouted. It was not yelled in protest. It was calmly spoken, almost deceptively so, by a journalist who had waited for the right moment. And that moment turned Dartmoor's landscape into a battleground. For an instant, time seemed to stall. William, ever the stoic, the royal with the composed gaze and carefully modulated voice, visibly tensed. His jaw locked, his lips parted as if choosing between diplomacy and raw honesty. Then, in what witnesses describe as a departure from protocol and polish, the Prince of Wales snapped. They're a bunch of liars. I would never say such a thing. No comment. Not a sidestep. Not a smile or dismissal, but a full-throated denial, sharp and explosive, that echoed through the field and quickly onto screens around the world. It wasn't just what he said, it was how he said it. His voice, edged with emotion. His brow, drawn and shadowed. His hands, clenched tighter than the usual royal clasp. This wasn't the careful choreography of Buckingham Palace press teams. This was personal. And just like that, the story changed. What was supposed to be a public commitment to environmental stewardship became an international royal scandal. Again, the question had pulled the curtain back on wounds that had never truly healed since that infamous Oprah Winfrey interview in 2021, when Meghan Markle and Prince Harry claimed someone in the royal family had expressed concerns about the potential skin tone of their unborn son, Archie. At the time, it triggered a media firestorm. The palace issued a rare statement acknowledging the gravity of the claim, noting recollections may vary, while maintaining a largely defensive posture. Prince William, days later, simply stated, "We are very much not a racist family." But that wasn't enough. The question lingered in the air like smoke that refuses to dissipate. And now, after years of silence on the matter, William had burst through the fog with a statement that was neither rehearsed nor sanitized. It was real, painfully real, and it reopened the wound for everyone to see. To understand why this moment matters so deeply, one must first understand the context in which it occurred. Prince William is not merely a royal figure. He is the symbol of continuity in a monarchy that has been battered by change, scandal, and public skepticism. Since Prince Harry and Meghan Markle stepped down as working royals and relocated to California, the firm, as insiders call the royal family, has been under relentless scrutiny. What was once contained within the ornate walls of palaces now plays out on social media, in courtrooms, and across primetime interviews. For many, William represents the crown's effort to modernize with restraint. He's the responsible brother, the one who stayed, The one who carried out his duties without spectacle, who raised his children under the gaze of tradition while quietly adjusting to a new era of monarchy. His image has been carefully sculpted to project reliability, integrity, and controlled evolution. So when he lashed out, however momentarily, the break in that image was seismic. It wasn't just a denial, it was an accusation in return. They're a bunch of liars. With those 6 words, he painted Meghan and Harry not as wounded exiles, but as fabricators of drama. It was a direct strike, made in public, in front of cameras. And in the world of royalty, where every syllable is vetted, every gesture calibrated, that kind of emotional clarity is rare, even dangerous. Immediately after the incident, reactions poured in. Social media erupted. Some praised William for finally standing up for himself, tired of the unending barrage of allegations from across the Atlantic. Others condemned him for letting emotion get the better of him, for potentially inflaming already sensitive racial issues. The footage was clipped, shared, analyzed frame by frame. Analysts commented on his posture. Lip readers studied the seconds before and after his statement. Every angle, every whisper, became part of a story that now refused to die quietly. Behind palace doors, aides reportedly scrambled. Damage control was initiated. Unofficial statements were whispered to loyal royal reporters. The line between what was planned and what had just happened blurred. Aides knew this was different. This wasn't like the Queen's recollections may vary approach. William had gone off script. He had created a new script altogether. Meanwhile, over 5,000 miles away in California, Harry and Meghan were silent. For now, no tweets, no statements, no appearances, but sources hinted at deep displeasure. He knows the truth, a source allegedly close to Meghan told one outlet. We hope to never have to name names. The subtle threat of escalation hung in the air. Royal biographers began chiming in. Some argued this was the breaking point, that the royal family could no longer pretend a reunion was possible. Others claimed this moment might paradoxically bring clarity, even reconciliation. But most agreed on one thing. William's outburst changed everything. And the public? The public was divided as ever. One camp saw William's statement as overdue, a rightful defense after years of personal attacks. Another saw it as confirmation that the royals were more fragile, more human, and perhaps more culpable than their carefully maintained image suggested. But this wasn't just about a family feud. This was about legacy. About who tells the story. About who gets to be believed. As the news cycle accelerates and the royal PR machine stutters forward, the implications of what happened at Dartmoor ripple through the monarchy's future. Will this be remembered as the moment William reclaimed his voice? Or the moment he lost control? Will it heal old wounds? Or deepen the divide beyond repair? This video will take you through everything, every thread that led to this exact moment in Dartmoor. From the beginnings of William and Harry's fractured brotherhood to the carefully curated narratives spun on both sides of the Atlantic. We'll examine the real cost of royal silence and what happens when that silence is finally broken. We'll dive deep into public reaction, expert analysis, and the hidden conversations you won't see in headlines. Because this is no longer just about who said what. This is about truth, about memory, about identity, and about a royal family struggling to hold itself together under the weight of its own legacy. Stay with us. We're just getting started. Long before the world watched their every move, before scandal and Netflix and transatlantic accusations, there were just 2 brothers, William and Harry. Born into privilege, yes, but also into a prison of tradition, duty, and constant observation. For many, they were the embodiment of resilience. 2 boys who walked behind their mother's coffin in 1997, forced to share their grief with an entire planet. The image of them, stiff, composed, side by side as the world mourned Princess Diana, became burned into the public psyche. From that moment, they were no longer just royal children. They were symbols. And symbols are not allowed to fracture. But fracture they did. Slowly at first. Subtly. The kind of hairline cracks that only the closest watchers noticed. Differences in tone during interviews, distant body language during public events, contrasting reactions to press scrutiny. In hindsight, it's all there. But in the moment, most believed, or wanted to believe, that William and Harry were as close as ever. In reality, their paths had already started to diverge. William, the elder, always bore the weight of expectation. From the moment he was born, the crown hovered in his future. It shaped his education, his relationships, his career decisions. He was expected to marry wisely, act diplomatically, and always put the institution first. And by most accounts, he did. William's romance with Catherine Middleton was one of caution and calculation. They dated for nearly a decade before marrying. Catherine was thoroughly vetted, educated in the ways of royal life, and widely accepted by the British public. She became an image of stability, even elegance. Harry, on the other hand, was the spare, the second son. The one allowed to be wild, to fail publicly, to explore identity with a bit more freedom. His life, at least early on, carried less weight. He served in the military, partied in Las Vegas, dressed inappropriately at costume parties, and dated women the tabloids chased like prey. His early 20s were littered with controversies, but they were forgiven as youthful indiscretions. After all, he wasn't the future king. He was the charming one, the funny one, the human one. But as they aged, the differences between them hardened into friction. Royal insiders have long whispered that William and Harry clashed behind closed doors, particularly around how to engage with the press and how involved the royal family should be in modern causes. William, ever the heir, stuck close to tradition. He built a network of advisors, trusted long-time aides, and avoided overtly political statements. Harry grew increasingly passionate, particularly about mental health, veterans' issues, and later, race and injustice. He also became more skeptical of palace protocols and of palace people. Then came Meghan Markle. To understand the royal rift, one cannot overstate her role, not as a cause, but as a catalyst. Harry met Meghan in 2016. Their relationship moved quickly. From the start, Meghan was unlike any woman the British royal family had seen enter their orbit. She was biracial, American, divorced, and had a successful career of her own. She was also outspoken, media-savvy, and culturally grounded in a different kind of celebrity ecosystem, one that didn't rely on deference to royal hierarchy. Initially, William reportedly welcomed Meghan, but things changed rapidly. According to multiple royal biographers, William advised Harry to take things slow. It was, on the surface, a brotherly suggestion, but Harry interpreted it as judgment. He allegedly believed William was being condescending or worse, protective of an outdated system that would never fully embrace someone like Meghan. The tension escalated from there. Staff began to notice the brothers weren't speaking as frequently. Their joint appearances, once relaxed and filled with quiet jokes, became stiff. Harry grew more defensive, more guarded. William grew more frustrated. Meghan, meanwhile, began facing relentless scrutiny from the British press. Stories about her difficult behavior, her supposed clashes with staff, her break from royal protocol. At one point, it was leaked that Meghan had made Kate cry during wedding preparations. Meghan would later insist in the Oprah interview that the opposite had happened, that it was Kate who made her cry, and that the palace did nothing to correct the record. Harry was furious. By 2018, it was clear to those inside the palace that the brothers were no longer aligned. Their joint household was split. Their staff divided. They now operated out of separate offices, with different press strategies and different priorities. Still, they appeared together when duty required it. At the opening of public memorials. At the christening of Archie. But even those appearances were shadowed by rumors. Body language experts dissected every glance, every gesture. And what they saw was distance, controlled politeness, carefully managed optics. Then came the ultimate rupture, Harry and Meghan's decision to step down from royal duties in early 2020. The announcement shocked the world. But insiders say it shocked William even more. He had not been consulted. He found out only shortly before the public did. The move, dubbed Megxit, was seen as a betrayal by some in the royal family. It wasn't just a personal decision, it was a political one. It signaled that Harry and Meghan no longer trusted the institution to protect them. That they were willing to chart their own course, even if it meant burning bridges. William's response was controlled, but deeply hurt. In private, he was said to be incandescent with rage. He believed Harry had not only abandoned his duty, but embarrassed the family. He also feared the precedent it would set. If Harry could just walk away, what did that mean for the monarchy's relevance? Its integrity? Publicly, William kept a calm front. But behind the scenes, he was furious. His brother had broken rank. And worse, he had done it publicly, messily, with accusations of racism and neglect attached to the exit. Even after the so-called Sandringham Summit, where Queen Elizabeth, Charles, William, and Harry met to hash out the terms of the departure, the wounds did not heal. Harry and Meghan moved to California. They signed lucrative media deals. They gave interviews. They launched a podcast. And through it all, their criticism of the royal institution grew louder. In the Oprah interview, they made it explicit. There have been conversations, Meghan said, about how dark Archie's skin might be. Harry confirmed the claim. And while neither named the royal responsible, they made it clear racism had played a role in their exit. The impact was immediate. Global headlines exploded. Social justice activists called for accountability. The palace issued a brief, carefully worded statement. William, when asked by a reporter during a school visit days later, replied, "We are very much not a racist family." But that wasn't the same as clearing the air. That wasn't a conversation. That wasn't resolution. It was another PR skirmish in a war that had now gone fully public. The brothers reunited briefly in 2021 at the unveiling of a statue honoring their late mother, Princess Diana. The event was highly anticipated, not just for the tribute itself, but for the possibility of reconciliation. The photos showed them smiling, exchanging words. But insiders quickly clarified those smiles were for the cameras. There was no deeper thaw. They were still on opposite sides of a deep, philosophical and emotional divide. Since then, there have been few interactions. Phone calls, when they happened, were brief. Kate reportedly tried to serve as a go-between, but even her influence had limits. The Queen's death in 2022 temporarily forced the family into physical proximity, but even then, the distance remained visible. Harry's memoir, Spare, only widened the chasm. In it, he described physical altercations with William. Accusations, misunderstandings, emotional abuse, all laid bare in prose. William, again, remained silent. But the silence spoke volumes. And now, Dartmoor. The moment when William, finally, let down the curtain, if only for a moment, and gave voice to the frustration he had buried for years. They're a bunch of liars. A line that now defines the latest chapter in this saga. Whether said in anger, truth, or exhaustion, it confirmed what many had suspected all along. This was no longer a Cold War. It was active, painful, and irreversibly personal. As we move forward, one thing is clear: the royal rift is no longer behind palace doors. It's in the open, exposed, and perhaps unfixable. The date was March 7, 2021. The world, already fractured by a global pandemic, gathered around television screens and streaming platforms in near silence to witness one of the most explosive interviews in royal history. Meghan Markle and Prince Harry sat across from Oprah Winfrey, arguably one of the most skilled and culturally influential interviewers alive. The setting was serene, an open-air garden, natural light pouring in, birds chirping faintly in the background. But the words that were about to be spoken would shatter any illusion of peace. What began as a conversation about their exit from royal duties quickly became something far deeper, darker, and more consequential. It was no longer just about institutional rigidity or media harassment. The interview peeled back layers of a centuries-old monarchy and exposed something that institutions of power rarely admit to: discrimination. Meghan, composed and articulate, sat in a black dress that would later become iconic for its simplicity and solemnity. Her voice never cracked, but the weight of her revelations pressed into every syllable. Oprah leaned in, her expressions mirroring what millions of viewers were feeling: disbelief, shock, discomfort. Then it came. The moment that changed everything. There were concerns and conversations about how dark his skin might be when he's born, Meghan said. Oprah's eyebrows raised. Her mouth opened slightly. She leaned forward. "What?" she asked, stunned. "Who was having that conversation with you?" Meghan shook her head, refusing to name names. That would be very damaging to them. The silence that followed was heavier than any words spoken. It wasn't just the content, it was the delivery. It was the implication that within the heart of one of the most powerful and influential families on the planet, discussions about skin color were taking place in anticipation of a child's birth. Later in the interview, Harry confirmed the conversation had occurred. He did not reveal who said it, but stated it had happened early in his relationship with Meghan and that he was shocked by it. "I was never going to share it," he said. "But at the time, it was awkward. I was a bit shocked." Immediately, speculation erupted. Who said it? That question became a global obsession. British tabloid newspapers, U.S. talk shows, social media threads, and radio stations all engaged in speculative analysis. Royal biographers, former palace staff, and press insiders weighed in. Theories ranged from senior members of the family to advisors and courtiers. Yet despite the pressure, Harry and Meghan stood firm in not naming the individual. Some observers saw this as a dignified restraint. Others criticized it as a way to ignite controversy without taking responsibility for the fallout. Behind the scenes, Buckingham Palace went into panic mode. Just hours after the interview aired, palace aides convened emergency meetings. The Queen, who rarely responded publicly to any controversy, authorized a brief but calculated statement. The whole family is saddened to learn the full extent of how challenging the last few years have been for Harry and Meghan, it read. The issues raised, particularly that of race, are concerning. While some recollections may vary, they are taken very seriously and will be addressed by the family privately. 3 sentences. 43 words. And yet, the implications were vast. Some recollections may vary. It was a phrase that became infamous, quoted in headlines, parroted in sketches, and dissected in op-eds. It was both an acknowledgement and a subtle dismissal. The palace had not denied that a conversation took place, but had instead questioned its framing or context. That sentence alone encapsulated the monarchy's larger dilemma: how to defend itself without directly undermining Harry and Meghan or admitting guilt. In the days that followed, Prince William was approached by a reporter while on a school visit. The question was direct. Is the royal family a racist family? He paused, clearly caught off guard. Before replying, "We are very much not a racist family." The statement was brief, but definitive. Still, many felt it was too little, too late. The world had already seen the interview, and more than that, it had felt it. The emotional resonance of Meghan describing suicidal thoughts while pregnant, of Harry recalling feeling trapped within the institution, left viewers stunned. And this wasn't just a celebrity grievance aired publicly. This was a profound accusation against a centuries-old institution with colonial roots and global influence. That allegation, racism at the top, cut through ceremonial titles and grand traditions. It spoke to a much larger truth that many had long suspected but had never heard confirmed from inside the palace walls. And yet, amid the global outrage, something else was happening. A divide was deepening. In the United States, public sentiment largely sided with Meghan and Harry. American audiences, historically more skeptical of monarchy, viewed the couple as whistleblowers, victims of a rigid system that failed to evolve. Meghan, in particular, was hailed as courageous, willing to confront a machine that had silenced women for generations. In the UK, the reaction was more complex. While many sympathized with their emotional pain, there was significant backlash against the couple's decision to air internal family matters on global television. Piers Morgan famously stormed off the set of Good Morning Britain after being confronted about his criticism of Meghan. Thousands of complaints were filed to Ofcom. Debate raged about media responsibility, truth, and the cultural gap between Britain and America in handling race and mental health. The monarchy, for its part, remained mostly silent. No follow-up statements. No royal interviews. No acknowledgement of who said what or when. The Queen's approach was one of quiet deflection. Handle it internally, address nothing publicly. But the damage was done. The Oprah interview created a fracture not just in the public image of the royal family, but in the moral foundation it claimed to represent. How could a family built on the ideals of duty, unity, and service harbor members who might privately express discomfort about the skin tone of a baby? Whether intended as curiosity or prejudice, the statement struck at the very core of modern values. It placed the monarchy not just in a historical spotlight, but in a contemporary moral crisis. Royal biographers began updating chapters in real time. Angela Levin, Omid Scobie, Robert Lacey each offered their perspective on the fallout. Levin questioned the accuracy of the claims. Scobie doubled down on institutional neglect and racial bias. Lacey emphasized the emotional wounds between the brothers and how Meghan's presence had revealed cracks that had long been there. Still, the identity of the person who made the comment remained sealed in ambiguity. Charles? Camilla? A senior courtier? William? No confirmation. No denial. This uncertainty allowed rumors to flourish and suspicion to multiply. Every public appearance by senior royals became a study in coded messages. Every interaction, or lack thereof, between family members was interpreted through the lens of that interview. And the effect was long-lasting. Even after the Queen's passing, the rift between Harry and the rest of the family was still influenced by that moment. Even as William assumed new responsibilities and titles, the shadow of Oprah's interview hung over every speech, every photo, every handshake. For a monarchy that relies so heavily on image and perception, this was a scar not easily hidden. Meghan and Harry, meanwhile, capitalized on the momentum. Their Netflix docuseries further detailed their experience. Meghan discussed being silenced. Harry spoke of protecting his family from the press and from internal betrayal. In Spare, his memoir, Harry expanded on these themes with even more rawness, including moments of conflict with William and Charles. The undercurrent of the Oprah interview remained that this was a family divided not just by fame, but by principle. And at the center of it all was the race allegation, a sentence spoken, repeated, dissected, and still unresolved. Because what Meghan said on that sunny California afternoon wasn't just a story, it was a mirror held up to one of the most enduring institutions on Earth. A mirror that reflected not just royal failings, but societal ones. It forced millions to ask, what does tradition protect? And what does it hide? As of today, the palace has never revisited the topic. No name has ever been revealed. No royal has volunteered further comment. But the public memory doesn't fade. And neither does the implication. Which is why, when that question was asked again in Dartmoor, directed squarely at Prince William, the world stopped. Because even 2 years later, the question still burns. And now, finally, a response has come. But is it too late? Dartmoor is not just a stretch of moorland in southwest England. It is a place of stories, a living, breathing symbol of Britain's ancient soul. Rugged tors, endless skies, hidden valleys, and a mist that seems to drift through centuries, it is landscape and legacy combined. For many, Dartmoor holds a quiet, defiant beauty. But for the royal family, and particularly for Prince William, its relevance goes beyond nature or nostalgia. It is political. It is personal. And on that fateful day, it became the setting for one of the most significant and controversial moments in his life as heir to the throne. To understand the weight of Dartmoor in this story, one must first understand its place in the larger national identity. Dartmoor National Park, one of the first national parks designated in England, is home to rich biodiversity, ancient ruins, and cultural heritage that stretches back thousands of years. It is a place where time seems suspended. The rolling moors have inspired poets, protected wildlife, and harbored generations of rural families. But Dartmoor is also under threat from environmental degradation, budget cuts, agricultural pressures, and, more recently, political disputes about land access and land ownership. Prince William's appearance at Dartmoor was meant to signify more than royal patronage. It was a declaration, a future king aligning himself with conservation, with heritage, and with action. William was unveiling a 20-year plan to restore Dartmoor's ecosystem, support local communities, and secure the park's future. This was not a one-time photo op. It was part of his long-term campaign to establish himself as a forward-thinking monarch. Someone not just resting on tradition, but leading through tangible commitment. In recent years, William has made sustainability and environmental protection core themes of his royal work. The launch of the Earthshot Prize in 2020 was a cornerstone in that strategy, a global environmental challenge to find innovative solutions to climate and ecological crises. In the wake of his father King Charles III's lifelong environmental advocacy, William has adopted a more modern, diplomatic approach. Where Charles once spoke to trees and clashed with architects, William speaks to scientists, works through partnerships, and communicates through sleek documentaries and curated events. Dartmoor was, in many ways, an ideal backdrop for this evolving image. A place rooted in history, yet crying out for preservation. A land that represents endurance, mystery, and beauty, qualities the monarchy itself strives to embody. And importantly, a region where royal connection still means something. The Duchy of Cornwall, which William inherited from his father when Charles became king, owns vast swaths of land in the West Country, including parts of Dartmoor. This makes his appearance not merely symbolic, but administrative. He is not just a royal visitor. He is a landowner, a stakeholder, a figure of influence. The event was carefully planned. William was to meet with Richard Drysdale, Director of Conservation and Communities for the Dartmoor National Park Authority, as well as a host of local leaders, conservationists, and farmers. There would be tours of moorland regeneration projects, conversations about local sustainability efforts, and photo opportunities with local schoolchildren. Royal aides expected a tight, positive media cycle. Stories about restoration. Headlines about hope. Footage of William striding through the moors, hands in jacket pockets, nodding thoughtfully as farmers and scientists explained their vision for the next 2 decades. This was meant to be William's moment of substance, a contrast to the glitter of palaces and the controversy swirling around his brother. But in the background, something else was happening. The British press, always hungry for drama, had begun sensing a new shift in the public mood. Following Harry and Meghan's growing presence in American media, and with the continued fallout from the Oprah interview, there was a growing appetite to see how the senior royals would respond, and more specifically, how William would respond. The press pool attending the Dartmoor event had been briefed. The focus was conservation, not controversy. Questions about the Sussexes were not to be expected. But journalists, especially royal correspondents, do not follow instructions, they follow instincts. And the instinct on this day told them something big could break. After all, the moment was charged in other ways too. Dartmoor itself had recently become the subject of public disputes regarding the right to wild camp on the moors. A historic legal ruling had triggered backlash, with protests and national coverage. Prince William's appearance was partially framed as an act of reconciliation to show that the new Duke of Cornwall was listening to the land and its people. But even here, tension hovered. While he was discussing carbon sequestration and soil regeneration with Drysdale and others, some reporters couldn't help but feel the undercurrent of something bigger. They knew that the longer William stayed silent on the race allegation, the more public pressure would build. The more the monarchy tried to keep the controversy sealed in the past, the more the public grew curious, suspicious, restless. Dartmoor, then, wasn't just a setting for a conservation speech. It became a crucible. It was the place where environmentalism met accountability, where legacy met the present, where the stoic heir was forced, finally, to confront the questions no palace aide could deflect forever. And perhaps that's what makes this moment so symbolic. Because Dartmoor, raw, unforgiving, majestic, mirrors the royal family in its own way. It is ancient, admired, but in danger. Parts of it are inaccessible, others overexposed. It needs protection but also transparency. Much like the monarchy, Dartmoor cannot survive on image alone. It must evolve. It must respond. It must listen. When the question finally came, blunt, cutting, inescapable, it disrupted every intention of the day. But it was never about just one question. It was about everything that had led to it. Years of silence, of fractured relationships, of half-responses, of public suspicion. Dartmoor became the unlikely battlefield for that confrontation. And from that moment forward, no one cared about the restoration plan. No one cared about the funding numbers or the ecological projections or the 20-year vision. The headlines that night weren't about mosses and moors. They were about the future king in 6 words. They're a bunch of liars. And yet, Dartmoor still matters. Because even if the message of the day was lost in the scandal, the place itself held meaning. It reminded everyone watching that monarchy isn't just ceremony. It's land. It's history. It's responsibility. The royals don't merely live in castles. They govern estates, influence policies, shape narratives about what Britain is and what it wants to be. William's presence at Dartmoor was a statement that he is not just a face in a portrait, but a man preparing to lead. That he understands legacy is built in the soil as much as in the crown. That he can speak not only to kingship but to climate, to culture, to crisis. And ironically, it was that very visibility, that willingness to step into public forums with unfiltered questions, that led to the unexpected explosion. Would this have happened if the event were behind palace walls? No. Would it have mattered as much if it did? Probably not. Dartmoor, in its vast openness, allowed the real to emerge. It stripped away the layers of protocol and offered a moment that could not be scripted. It was a place where William, despite the controlled optics, was forced to respond like a man, not just a monarch in waiting. The irony is almost poetic. In choosing Dartmoor to shape his image as a thoughtful, modern heir, William ended up revealing a rawer, more human side, one marked not by environmental pledges, but emotional eruption. And while that may not have been the plan, it may have said more about the pressures he carries than any speech about conservation ever could. Dartmoor mattered that day, not just because of what it represents, but because of what it revealed. It became a mirror, a battleground, and perhaps a turning point. It began like any other high-profile royal engagement. There was a tight schedule, an approved media list, and the usual mixture of local officials, environmentalists, photographers, and royal watchers carefully positioned at pre-designated points around Dartmoor. Prince William arrived promptly, stepping out of the sleek, Black Royal Range Rover with the same composed demeanor he always carries, hands loosely clasped in front, smile trained, body language relaxed but guarded. The skies over Dartmoor were unusually clear that day. The sun cast long, soft shadows across the moor, offering the perfect lighting for photographers eager to capture the next image that might make the front page. William began his walkabout with Richard Drysdale, Director of Conservation and Communities of the Dartmoor National Park Authority. They discussed the park's biodiversity, a new native tree planting initiative, and the ecological impact of overgrazing. Everything was going according to plan. William nodded, asked questions, and pointed at mapboards with interest. Cameramen followed at a distance, getting their B-roll. But as the group moved toward a ridge near Holne Moor, where William was expected to deliver his closing remarks, something changed. The air grew heavier. Not meteorologically, but atmospherically. Some observers later described a feeling like static before a storm. The group was preparing to disperse when an unexpected question broke through the hum of polite chatter and controlled movement. "Are you the one who questioned Archie's skin tone, like Meghan implied?" It didn't come from a protester or an angry outsider. It came from a credentialed freelance journalist embedded in the day's press rotation. According to witnesses, the voice was calm, but clear. Not shouted, not aggressive. Just firm, direct, timed. It pierced the formality of the moment like a needle puncturing a balloon. Everyone stopped. William, who had been mid-sentence with a local farmer discussing rewilding projects, turned abruptly. His expression, neutral just a moment before, visibly tensed. For a full second, and it was a long second, he said nothing. His lips were slightly parted, his jawline visibly clenched. He blinked. There was a twitch at the corner of his mouth. And then came the words. "They're a bunch of liars. I would never say such a thing." Delivered with a force no one expected. Not from him. Not here. It wasn't the words alone, it was the heat behind them. For someone as disciplined as William, who has spent a lifetime mastering the art of measured speech and quiet composure, the emotional charge was unmistakable. His voice wasn't raised to a yell, but it wasn't calm either. It was hard. Final. Stinging. The crowd didn't erupt. There was no audible gasp. But every eye in the vicinity turned sharply toward him. Journalists began scribbling faster. Recorders were subtly clicked on. Royal aides, previously on the fringes of the gathering, moved closer. The silent choreography of damage control had already begun. Behind William, Richard Drysdale appeared stunned, looking over his shoulder with the dazed look of someone who had just been blindsided by a completely different conversation. Aides exchanged glances. One reportedly muttered, "Not now," under his breath. But the words had already escaped. There was no retrieving them. One photographer described the moment as tense enough to snap a camera lens. Another said, it was like watching a dam break. For context, royal engagements are carefully controlled affairs. Every location is scouted. Every interaction is anticipated. The press is vetted, and the subject matter is usually confined to the occasion at hand, in this case, conservation. That question was not just off-script. It was explosive, and it hit a nerve. William's relationship with his brother had already been strained to the point of fracture. But up until this moment, he had maintained the facade. A cold front, perhaps, but still intact. What happened at Dartmoor was a rupture. It was unfiltered emotion bubbling to the surface after years of restraint. Body language analysts would later point out that William's posture shifted dramatically after the exchange. His shoulders hunched slightly. His pacing changed from smooth to brisk. His hand gestures, previously open and relaxed, became tighter, clenched at the sides. His eyes, normally steady and smiling during engagements, grew narrow, calculating. It wasn't rage, exactly, it was something more raw. Something caught Batu. Within minutes, the event began to wind down. But the energy had shifted. The press pool, sensing the moment was bigger than any conservation pledge, began uploading footage immediately. Social media timelines began lighting up with clips, commentary, and breaking headlines. Prince William explodes over race allegation became a trending phrase on multiple platforms. One reporter tweeted, "Just witnessed the most unfiltered moment in Prince William's public life." This was not scripted. This was real. The palace communications team was unprepared. They had no holding statement ready, no contingency for a question that directly referenced one of the most volatile moments in recent royal history. William was ushered back to the vehicle within minutes. Gone was the small talk, the final handshakes. The entire engagement had shortened by nearly 20 minutes. Inside the car, it's believed that William sat in silence for much of the ride. Sources close to the event later suggested he was visibly shaken, not because he regretted his words, but because he knew what was coming. The news cycle, the criticism, the scrutiny, the inevitable response from California. Later that evening, palace insiders scrambled to draft potential responses, but they were caught between conflicting instincts. Should they downplay it? Should they spin it as a passionate defense against defamation? Should they remain completely silent and let the storm pass? No consensus was reached that night. Meanwhile, inside newsrooms across London, editors rearranged front pages. A story that had been slated for back-page coverage, William's green future for Dartmoor, was immediately pulled. In its place were headlines like "Royal Fury at Race Claims" and Prince William's explosive outburst caught on camera. In Montecito, California, it said that Harry and Meghan's team were made aware of the incident within the hour. They watched the clip, privately, in their home. No official word came from their foundation, Archwell, but journalists began receiving off-the-record remarks. One statement said, "He knows what happened. They both do." Back in the UK, public reaction was divided. Some hailed William for finally standing up for himself. "It's about time he stopped pretending everything was fine," one royal supporter posted. Others accused him of undermining his own dignity. That comment sounded like bitterness, not clarity, a former BBC correspondent noted. The press was quick to draw parallels. They compared the moment to previous instances where royal emotion had broken protocol. Diana's panorama interview, Charles's leaked phone call to Camilla, Harry's own breakdown during the Africa documentary. But this was different. This wasn't a controlled reveal. It wasn't part of a broader campaign. It was a slip, and in the world of royalty, slips are never without consequence. Royal biographer Penny Junor stated, "For someone like William, this was a moment of real jeopardy. He let his guard down. But in doing so, he also humanized himself in a way we've rarely seen." Others disagreed. "This will haunt him," said one former palace aide. "The monarchy survives on control, not candor." The next day, palace aides attempted to reset the narrative. They released a short press note emphasizing William's commitment to environmental justice and community partnership. But it was ignored. The press wasn't interested in green initiatives anymore. They wanted follow-ups. They wanted clarification. Was William accusing Harry and Meghan of lying? Was he denying the race conversation ever happened? Was he calling Oprah's broadcast a fabrication? No further comment came. But silence, in the world of power, is often interpreted as confirmation. The press coverage only intensified. Talk shows, morning news segments, and late-night panels debated the meaning of William's outburst. Was it strategic? Was it a mistake? Was it long overdue? And more importantly, what would come next? Some speculated that this moment marked the end of any reconciliation, that whatever fragile hopes existed for Harry and William to someday rebuild trust had been shattered in 6 words. Others argued it was a necessary reset, a public acknowledgement that the cordial silence strategy had failed, and that raw honesty, however painful, was the only path forward. But no matter the interpretation, one thing was certain. The moment had happened, and it could not be taken back. It wasn't just a headline. It was a line drawn in the sand. Not at Buckingham Palace, not in a courtroom, but out on the moors, beneath an open sky, with the world watching. What began as a day dedicated to conservation had become one of confrontation, and in that split-second decision to respond, to abandon the usual royal restraint and speak from emotion, William had altered the course of the royal narrative. Because from this point on, every conversation about the brothers, about the monarchy, about race and responsibility would include Dartmoor. It would include that question, and it would include that answer. News doesn't wait in the modern world. It surges. It explodes. And what happened in Dartmoor was no exception. Within minutes of Prince William's unguarded remark, "They're a bunch of liars. I would never say such a thing," the internet caught fire. It was as though a dormant volcano had erupted and instantly reshaped the landscape of royal commentary, public discourse, and media speculation. By the time William had left the Dartmoor site and returned to the duchy's residence, the headlines had already flooded in. Every major British outlet, from The Guardian to the Daily Mail, pushed breaking alerts. Tabloids ran early editions with screaming front-page headlines. William snaps. Royal eruption. Prince denies Meghan's bomb claim. Even more moderate papers like The Times covered the statement with front-page positioning. It wasn't just news, it was frontline history in motion. Across the Atlantic, American media outlets jumped on the clip. ABC, NBC, CNN, and Fox News all aired the footage, each with its own framing. Morning shows lined up commentators. British and American royal watchers were booked back-to-back to provide insight, background, and speculation. The contrast in tone was stark. In the UK, many networks presented the clip with a degree of tension. Was this a gaffe? Was this premeditated? In the US, however, the focus quickly shifted to the racial aspect of the conversation and whether William's denial implied dishonesty from Meghan and Harry. But the biggest battlefield was social media. Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram ignited in real time. Hashtags like #RoyalRacism, #WilliamExplodes, and #Dartmoor Meltdown trended globally within an hour. The moment was clipped, slowed down, captioned, and remixed. Dozens of camera angles emerged as reporters and attendees uploaded their videos. Some showed the precise moment William turned his head sharply, eyes flashing. Others captured the crowd's reaction, including the sharp intake of breath from someone standing just feet away. The takes were immediate and endless. He finally said what he's been thinking all along. So much for dignity. He lost his temper in front of cameras. Calling his brother and sister-in-law liars? That's a nuclear move. Good. Maybe now they'll stop dragging the monarchy through the mud. This is just more proof the firm can't handle accountability. In minutes, the debate moved beyond royalty and into the heart of modern discourse. It wasn't just a family matter anymore. It became about truth, about race, about the limits of tradition, about institutional fragility. William's outburst became a prism through which millions saw confirmation of their existing beliefs, either about the royal family's dignity or its dysfunction. Influencers jumped in. Academics, celebrities, politicians. Each corner of the cultural sphere responded. Dr. Shola Moshe, a well-known British lawyer and political activist, posted a video critiquing William's denial. "Let's be clear," she said. "This wasn't just about a personal insult. It's about accountability. Denying the existence of the conversation doesn't erase the pain or the history." On the other side, British journalist Dan Wootton defended William passionately during his nightly segment. "He's been demonized for too long. Harry and Meghan tossed a grenade into the royal family and then left. William's finally defending the truth." Meanwhile, Piers Morgan, never one to remain silent, called the moment a long overdue reckoning. "For years we've been told William and Kate are cold, calculating. Now we see the real emotion." He snapped. Yes, but it was real. And frankly, understandable. In the days following the incident, newspapers and television segments dug deeper. They interviewed body language experts, analyzed audio waveforms for vocal stress. One headline read, "Prince's fury. Was it anger, pain, or both?" Others debated the implications on the monarchy's future. Was this a sign of weakness? Or finally, a break in the wall of calculated silence? The media frenzy didn't remain confined to English-speaking countries either. German outlets like Der Spiegel ran full-length features. French and Spanish publications translated the quotes and ran banner stories on their homepages. The incident was covered on primetime Japanese television, discussed in Indian newsrooms, and debated on talk shows across Africa and South America. But perhaps the most potent reactions came from citizens. Ordinary people around the world who found themselves unexpectedly invested in the unfolding royal drama. On Facebook forums, Reddit threads, and WhatsApp groups, the debate was relentless. Some saw William as a victim of slander, someone pushed too far. Others saw a man who had been hiding behind palace privilege now exposed as incapable of self-reflection. A TikTok video featuring side-by-side clips of Meghan's Oprah interview and William's Dartmoor response went viral. It juxtaposed Meghan calmly explaining the skin tone allegation with William's explosive denial, using music and transitions to highlight the stark contrast in tone. That video alone amassed over 12 million views in 2 days. But beyond the memes and hashtags, there was real-world fallout. Public relations firms began quietly advising celebrities connected to either side of the Sussex-Wales divide to stay quiet. Charitable organizations with royal patronage hesitated to release statements or tweet supportive messages for fear of seeming partisan. Even politicians treaded carefully. Labour MPs criticized the monarchy's handling of past allegations but avoided directly commenting on William's words. Conservative MPs leaned into their traditional defense of the monarchy while urging calm and decorum. Behind palace walls, it was chaos. Royal aides were overwhelmed by media requests. Some courtiers reportedly advised the communications office to immediately issue a clarification that William's statement was emotional but not accusatory. Others urged complete silence, fearing that any further statement might escalate tensions or provoke a legal response from Meghan and Harry's camp. And therein lay the real dilemma. William's words had not just accused his brother and sister-in-law of dishonesty, they had reignited the central issue the monarchy had tried desperately to contain: race. By denying the allegation with such finality, he reopened the conversation the Oprah interview had started. And now, 2 years later, the public was once again forced to ask, who do we believe? Who's telling the truth? Royal commentators pointed out that William had unintentionally made the question even more explosive by responding at all. Had he ignored it, the story might have faded. But by denying it, forcefully and emotionally, he created a new chapter, one that demanded deeper scrutiny. Was this moment calculated? Some believed yes. A few analysts suggested the palace had anticipated the question and that William's response, though emotional, was part of a pre-cleared set of talking points designed to finally reclaim the narrative. If so, the plan backfired. Others believed it was a rare, uncontrolled moment in a life governed by control. A human breaking point after years of pressure. Either way, the story was no longer containable. The media began revisiting the original Oprah interview in full. Outlets reran the clips of Meghan and Harry describing the royal family's lack of support, the suicidal thoughts Meghan endured, and the moment when they claimed a family member expressed concern over how dark their child's skin might be. Articles dissected every word. Commentators asked, were there multiple conversations? Was it taken out of context? Was it an isolated incident or part of a broader pattern? Newspapers brought out past headlines as evidence, stories from Meghan's time in the UK that had racial overtones. Comparative pieces ran showing how Kate Middleton was praised for touching her pregnant belly, while Meghan was mocked for the same gesture. The media, it seemed, was now being asked to account for its own role in shaping public perception. And yet, for every headline sympathetic to Meghan and Harry, there were others sympathetic to William. Letters to the editor flooded in. Online polls showed splits in public opinion. Some royal fans organized "We Stand With William" campaigns, while others launched hashtags like #BelieveMeghan and #SilenceIsComplicity. Public figures weighed in as well. U.S. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez reposted the Dartmoor clip, commenting on the deeper legacy of colonial institutions avoiding accountability for race-related issues. Meanwhile, British actor Hugh Grant called for a return to measured dialogue, warning that emotional outbursts won't heal centuries of division. It didn't help that timing was terrible for the monarchy. Just weeks earlier, Prince Andrew had quietly settled a lawsuit related to allegations of sexual abuse. The royal family was already in damage control mode. William's Dartmoor moment added more fuel to a fire they hadn't finished putting out. And then came the polls. One YouGov poll conducted 48 hours after the incident showed a dip in William's approval ratings among younger demographics. Among Britons aged 18 to 34, only 43% viewed him favorably, down from 59% the month before. Among older Britons, support remained steady, with nearly 70% backing him. In the United States, Harry and Meghan saw a temporary bump in approval, particularly among Black Americans, 65% of whom expressed sympathy for their position. But the real consequence was harder to measure: trust. Did the British public still trust the royal family to manage itself with dignity and transparency? Could William still present himself as a neutral heir, above the fray? Could the monarchy retain its symbolic power if its internal fractures were constantly spilling into the public eye? For many, the answer was unclear. One columnist summed it up best: this is not just about two brothers. This is about the soul of the institution. The battle over who owns the truth is now being fought on open ground, and everyone is watching. In the end, the media explosion had done more than amplify a scandal. It had unearthed old wounds. It had reignited public skepticism. And it had forced the royal family, once again, to face a truth they could no longer avoid. The world had changed, and they could no longer hide behind silence. In the immediate aftermath of Prince William's Dartmoor remark, Buckingham Palace found itself plunged into a familiar, but no less chaotic scenario: crisis mode. But unlike past moments of turbulence, this was not a media story driven by leaks, paparazzi, or tabloid speculation. This time, the words came directly from the heir to the throne. unscripted, unfiltered, and undeniably public. Inside the royal machine, phones rang before William had even left Dartmoor. Senior aides in Buckingham Palace, Clarence House, and Kensington Palace were simultaneously briefed by private secretaries and press officers. The key facts were clear. A credentialed journalist had asked William whether he was the unnamed royal Meghan referred to in the Oprah interview. William responded forcefully, calling Meghan and Harry a bunch of liars. The statement was captured on multiple cameras. It was already online. It was already viral. The palace had no prepared script for this. Unlike the Queen's death, which had been choreographed down to the second, or the Megxit transition, which had been negotiated in a series of formal meetings, this was an uncontrolled moment. It was raw, and it put the entire communication strategy for the monarchy at risk. At Kensington Palace, Prince William's primary base of operations, key staffers convened in the crisis meeting room, often jokingly referred to by insiders as the Situation Suite. Coffee was poured. Phones were silenced. And the conversation began with one simple question: what now? There were two immediate camps forming among William's advisors. The first camp, composed of seasoned palace veterans, urged total silence. Their argument was grounded in traditional royal wisdom: never complain, never explain. Let the media cycle burn itself out. Don't fan the flames. Allow surrogates, friendly journalists, royal commentators, anonymous sources close to the palace to shift the narrative subtly back to Dartmoor's environmental agenda. Use distraction, not confrontation. Let time do the work. The second camp, younger and more media-savvy, believed this was a turning point that required direct intervention. Their argument: silence implies guilt. A follow-up statement, carefully worded and subtly clarifying, could reframe William's remark as a principled defense against falsehood. They proposed a line to be floated: Prince William's comments were a spontaneous affirmation of truth in the face of harmful mischaracterizations. He stands by his commitment to fairness and unity. But the risks were enormous. Any new statement could provoke a direct response from Harry and Meghan, possibly including the long-feared revelation of who, exactly, made the skin tone comment. A war of words between palaces across oceans was not something the monarchy could afford. The public was already growing weary of the family feud. Another round of accusations and denials could cause permanent reputational damage. King Charles was informed within the hour. Although he had not been present at Dartmoor, he was fully briefed by Sir Clive Alderton, his principal private secretary. Sources close to Charles say he was deeply frustrated, but not surprised. He had long been concerned that his son's private animosity might one day explode in public. William's outburst, while unintentional, was precisely the kind of moment he had hoped to avoid. Charles's instinct, reportedly, was to cool the situation as quickly as possible. He instructed his communications team not to issue any formal statement, public or private, until they had a clear sense of how the press and public were reacting. "We don't chase the press," he was quoted as saying in an internal call. "We outlast them." Meanwhile, Camilla's aides were already drafting contingency plans. Her office had been blindsided by the previous Oprah scandal when her name briefly surfaced in speculative articles as the possible speaker behind the skin tone remark. While Harry and Meghan later clarified that it wasn't the Queen or Prince Philip, Camilla was not publicly ruled out. Her advisors feared that William's blunt denial might inadvertently bring her name back into circulation. A preemptive narrative needed to be shaped. Camilla was focused on her charitable work, staying out of family drama, and remaining a stabilizing presence beside the king. At Kensington Palace, William's own mood was reportedly quiet, reflective, and stern. He understood the magnitude of what had happened. For hours after the incident, he declined to speak publicly or record any follow-up. Instead, he met with a small circle of advisors behind closed doors. Some encouraged him to issue a public clarification, perhaps through a soft interview with a trusted journalist. Others advised him to attend his next public event as though nothing had happened, acting as if the moment in Dartmoor was a misunderstanding or a misinterpretation. The possibility of calling Meghan or Harry directly to defuse the tension was floated. It was immediately dismissed. There was no trust. No shared language. No pathway for private resolution at that point. Every word exchanged between the brothers in recent years had risked becoming public. Any contact now could lead to another leak, another headline. So instead, the palace returned to what it knows best: containment. That evening, a slew of sympathetic voices began appearing across British media. Palace sources provided off-the-record insights, subtly reframing William's remarks as a protective brother's emotional response to ongoing attacks. One senior royal reporter wrote, "William is known for his loyalty to family. He may have spoken out of turn, but his sincerity is unquestioned." Another article highlighted the mental and emotional toll that public life had taken on the heir, reminding readers that he was not just a royal but a husband, a father, and a son who had endured relentless pressure. Simultaneously, Dartmoor-based organizations published statements reiterating the importance of Prince William's environmental initiative. News outlets received ready-made content featuring William's discussions with local farmers, conservationists, and schoolchildren. The goal was clear: drown out the scandal with substance. Shift the conversation. But it wasn't enough. The press had tasted something real, something rare, and they wouldn't let it go easily. In a private meeting the next morning, aides from all three royal households met via secure video call. Their aim? To coordinate messaging. It was a delicate balancing act. Kensington needed to defend William without escalating the feud. Buckingham needed to protect the monarchy as a whole. Clarence House, representing Charles, needed to remain above the fray while quietly guiding the family back toward stability. One proposal was floated: have William attend a low-risk, friendly public engagement within the week. Ideally one involving children or mental health work, where he could be seen smiling, listening, and embodying the future of a compassionate monarchy. Let the images speak for him. No interviews. No questions taken. Just visibility and poise. Another suggestion: reach out to the BBC or ITV and offer a sit-down interview, heavily pre-negotiated, limited in scope, with questions agreed upon in advance. This would